Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted Tuesdays in the off-season and twice during the regular season. The huddle features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. We start off first with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC football news. Now let's meet Tuesday's panelists. A WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports. He also hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked On USC. That's Marc Kulkin. A former 1975 USC team captain, Trojans as well as an all-conference linebacker, honorable mention, All-American, and starter on the 1974 national champions. We welcome back Kevin Bruce. And the chairman and CEO of WeAreSC.com, a USC graduate and a former 45-year trial lawyer and a former United States federal prosecutor, Bruce Bagni. And a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays the Obvious and Not So Obvious, IMHO Sunday, and is an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, Greg Katz. Before we begin the kickoff for this Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here is the latest USC football news. On Monday, the Trojans received a portal transfer commitment from former Florida Gators offensive lineman Ethan White, 6'4", 331, who visited USC this past weekend. White, an offensive guard for the Gators, who earned 2022 AP All-SEC second team, joins another former Florida offensive lineman, Michael Tarkin, as Trojans member for the 2023 season. For the record, White is a native of Clearwater, Florida, and he has one season of eligibility remaining. The second national letter of intent window for signing high school players for the class of 2023 begins next week. Reportedly, the Trojans are in a very strong recruiting position for Gardena, California's Sarah Corner, Roderick Pleasant. Two others to keep an eye on next week are Phoenix, Arizona Pinnacle High five-star tight end Deuce Robinson and current TCU safety commit Warren Robertson. And in Friday night's Polynesian Bowl in Honolulu, Hawaii, featuring a number of five-star athletes from the recruiting class of 2023, there were a number of USC Trojans who participated. Headliner was wide receiver Zachariah Ease Branch, who lit up the game in the second quarter with an electrifying 34-yard touchdown reception. Branch showed why he's considered the number one wide receiver in the country and also its most explosive player. And the 2023 Pac-12 schedule was released last week, and it was announced the Trojans will open the season by hosting San Jose State in the Coliseum on Saturday, August 26th. The entire Pac-12 schedule will be discussed and analyzed at length in the second half of today's portion of Inside the Trojans Huddle. And friends, WeAreSC Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership. We encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly appreciated and it's free. And a reminder, WeAreSC.com is offering a subscription special up to August 31st, 2023. You can get all of the WeAreSC premium content for just $29.95 or $9.95 per month. All right. We've got the business taken care of. We're going to start the first half, and this is personal. We kick off with a celebration and a remembrance on the 4th anniversary of the passing of former WeAreSC.com founder and publisher Garry Paskwietz. For many of you, you know that Garry left us at the young age of 52 years old in 2019 due to health issues. However, the former USC graduate left USC fans as a true internet pioneer regarding USC football and Trojans athletics in general. He created the popular WeAreSC.com message boards for USC fans to exchange ideas, comments, and information, and provided the well-attended and fun-loving recruiting dinners, and of course, the main meat and potatoes of WeAreSC.com, the coverage of USC football and USC recruiting news, as well as other athletic items. We'd also be remiss not to mention that Garry had a huge hand in the local and national broadcasting careers of such notables as Petros Papadakis, John J.J. Jackson, Lindsey Rhodes, Daryl Rideau, and many others who got their start at WeAreSC.com. And Garry was also recognized for his production work on the Fox Sports High School Game of the Week and was an Emmy Award recipient. Upon his passing, Fox Sports paid tribute to Garry by creating the Garry Paskwietz Player of the Game, a plaque given to the evening's most outstanding player. So with that in hand, a little background on Garry, but we're going to get into this because it's really, really important for everyone to know how we all are together at this point in time and the legacy that Garry left us. So panel, let's first start out by having you tell the viewers and listeners how you met Garry and your relationship with him. Marc Kulkin, you're our normal leadoff hitter. So tell us about your relationship, how you met Garry, and so on and so forth.
So it started on his message board, and it's there was only there's 2 or 3 message boards around at the time, and 20 plus years ago, it was still in its infancy, and so it was. When I came around, it was right after literally the end of the Paul Hackett era. So everybody was still kind of in a foul mood. And I was looking for a place to kind of commiserate. And I was like, oh, wow, here's a place on the internet. And it was just, it was a place where you could voice your opinion and people, would just interact with each other. And it almost became, oh my gosh, I got to do this every single day. It got to a point where there was such a community that had grown on it. Me and myself and 2 other longtime regular posters decided, let's put some faces behind these names. And we started these, what were called meet and greets. And it's turned out just 3 or 4 of us turned out for lunch one time. And we came back to the message board. We talked about how great of a time it was. And it kind of just multiplied. Garry showed up at one of them, and that's how I met him. So to kind of make a really long story short, I was introduced to this industry by just being a regular message board poster who wanted to come talk about USC. And it happened at the perfect time, the end of the Paul Hackett era, that led right into the Pete Carroll era. Yeah. And just to be able to be a part of that community and know how much Garry loved listening to other people talk about it. He didn't always offer his opinion unless you asked for it. But I know he enjoyed the interaction that he was able to provide for the Trojan family out there. So that's how I was able to meet him. And full circle. Wow.
Marc, let me expand on this with you just for a moment. For someone who never met Garry, how would you describe him?
Very inviting. He very easy to talk to. I don't know, is the word jovial? He was. Rarely did I ever see Garry in a bad mood. I mean, there were times where you knew he wasn't happy, but he was able to flip that switch. And if you were around Garry, you felt welcome. That's I guess the best way you can describe it. In Yiddish terms, a mensch.
Now that I would say that's pretty appropriate. So Kevin Bruce, now here you're a former player. How did you get to meet Garry? And amplifying on the second part of what I asked Marc, for someone who never met him, how would you describe him?
Well, he clearly was a very approachable person, generally in good spirits. Clearly wanted to talk about his passion, which there was no doubt. If you talked to him for more than a few minutes, that it was USC football, and then the website and related matters. So I met Garry literally on the board. I started writing more responses to certain, posters, and he called me up one day. He called me up one day and started talking football. And I was good on that, and from that point forward, we became good friends, and from a distance for the most part. I went to a few games in LA, of course, and met with Garry and some of the players that also associated with him, and we had good times then telling stories. We all got better as the lies got bigger, but it all counts, right? And a lot of the guys that were talking, we had some commonalities, some of which included having some affiliation with the national championship teams. So that was, there's still a fair amount of that DNA in the USC blood, just for those that are waiting for another championship season. Well, it's on its way. It's just it's going to be time, and Garry is a part of that from afar, of course, but he was clearly somebody that made more out of something, and I always appreciated that about him. And he was very pleasant and a good guy to talk USC football, and a lot of people loved him for it. I got to start writing for WeAreSC.com. I also started writing some inputs to his radio broadcast, which was the pregame radio broadcast that he used to do as well. I provided him some defensive thoughts and ideas as well that he could use from time to time. So whether he used them or not, I don't know. I couldn't keep track of it, but that wasn't what was important. What was important was I was happy to be helpful to him.
So if someone had never met Garry, how would you describe his interaction with people?
I couldn't hear all of that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll repeat it. For someone who had not met Garry before, how would you describe Gary's interaction with people?
He was a very approachable individual, as I said earlier, and somebody that you wanted to have a chat with, and better that you wanted to talk about USC football than anything else. That was for sure. That was his love. There was no doubt about it. At the website, a close second.
Okay, I kind of, what I did was I wanted to switch the order here. I originally was going to go to Bruce, but then I said, Bruce had a unique relationship with Garry, from both personal and involvement at WeAreSC.com to where he is today. So Bruce, tell us a little bit about Garry, how you met Garry, and basically the type of individual that he was.
Yeah, well, I've told this story a lot about how I first met him, and I'll tell that in just a second. But the thing I want to say is that Garry was just kind of a selfless, unselfish, positive, good guy. I mean, he was a guy who the glass was always half full. And I think Marc mentioned that. And that makes a hell of a lot of difference to be around somebody like him than to be around somebody where it's half empty. But Garry, just a lovely, lovely guy. I got to know him and got to know his family a little bit, but just a wonderful human being, and smart as a whip, and all. But I met him, this is an interesting story. It was in the 90s, and we were suffering through JR2, and then Hacky Jack. That's why my son Vince calls him Hacky Jack. But in the 90s, in the latter part of the 90s, I was a senior executive at a big company here in Florida, and there was no internet then, and I couldn't get any news about SC. Because all they want to talk about is, who, the damned SEC and Florida State, right? And so I couldn't get any news. And so somehow my son Vince connected with a guy named Bob Bonanno And Bob, as it turned out, was Gary's partner, along with Ronnie Lott, I might add, for something called Trojan Football Facts. And so when Vince was on the phone with Bonanno, he started asking Bonanno a lot of questions about football, SC football. And Bonanno said, hey, you don't need to, you got to talk to my partner because he's the one who knows everything. So Gary came on and they had a great talk. Long story short, I got connected, and that started a 23, 24 year friendship. And I was involved as an investor. I joined those guys in Trojan Football Facts, and then later joined Owen Creditor and others, Gary's mother and so forth, in the investing in WeAreSC. But so that was a great thing for me to connect with Gary, and that started this incredible relationship where he would call and tell me or tell Vince things that he couldn't tell other people. This is one of the things I really loved about Gary. He one of the things he had great integrity as a journalist. He did not print something unless it was true. Imagine that today. What a shocker. But he had a lot of integrity in that regard. But every once in a while, he'd learn something. And maybe it was a rumor or it hadn't been finalized. And he just had to talk to somebody. I'm over 3,000 miles away and Vince is 3,000 miles in Florida. So he called us, right? So we're talking. But the one quick story I'll tell, and that's a true story. I was up in front of the board of this company and I was discussing a $100 million acquisition. And I had told my secretary that, listen, if somebody named Garry Paskwietz calls me, I don't care what's going on, you come get me. It's urgent. So I'm up there presenting, I'm right in the middle of this thing. And I see Bonnie in the back of the room and she's mouthing, Garry Paskwietz, Garry Paskwietz. So I said to them, oh, listen, something's come up. I'll be right back. So I go to my office. Gary's on the phone. He's telling me about some kid who just committed silently, some kid from modern day. I forgot who it was, but that's kind of the way it was for years and years. And so he was a great source of information, but in the process, we became great friends. He was down here with his cousin one time. We all played golf. But I think the best things that we did were the dinners that we did at the Pacific Dining Car down on 6th Street, which it's now closed, but it's, just a legendary old steakhouse. It's an old, train car. And, but we had these incredible dinners there when I'd come out from Florida during the season, or I went to a lot of spring practices, or I'd go out with Gary when he'd look at the high school players. And by the way, I have to admit, I did a little illegal recruiting. I apologize now for it, but I did. I told Darryl Rideau there was no way he was going to Notre Dame. So whatever. But we had these dinners at Pacific Dining Car, and they were incredible. We had a whole bunch of SC people. Jim Hardy was one of them, who had played quarterback for SC in the 40s and then played for the Lions and the Rams. He was a great guy. He's now dead, but he lived out in Palm Springs. He'd drive in and have dinner with us. There were, just a long list of people, John Jackson and Darryl and Ryan Hancock and Brandon Hancock, and a whole bunch of people. But those were great, great times. We had fun. He always brought a bottle of wine from his college buddy, Jeffrey Mayo, who has a winery in Sonoma that they do very, very nice Red Zinfandel. And so he would always bring a bottle of the Red Zinfandel to the restaurant. But it was, and they had there's a big round table in the back, and they kind of knew when we came, they just reserved it for us. And we'd be in there for 3-4 hours. It was just wonderful times. Just had a great, great time with him. And talking about a whole host of things, but largely SC football. But he was like a member of the family to me. And anyway.
How, if someone had never met Garry, in a couple of words, how would you describe him?
Honest, dignified, had a lot of integrity, very optimistic, and very congenial.
Yes, I think that all three of you have given a great account of your relationship with Garry and how you saw him. For me, it went back to 2001. I would see him. I didn't know who he was, and I would see him at UC Irvine when SC used to go up there for a pre-camp, so to speak, and he'd be wearing this giant, I don't know, straw hat, I guess. For
Yeah,
I think straw hat was almost as big as I was, but we would talk. I didn't know who he was, and we were focused in on it, and I paid really a lot of attention to what was going on. In fact, I think that was a practice that Hackett got so upset at that he threw the whole team off the field. And Garry and I just go, oh my gosh, we're coming to watch this, and now he's throwing everybody off the field. But what happened was I was going to message boards. There was one that's still in play now. It's called the Wild West board.
Oh yeah, sure. The green board.
The green board, yeah. And so, kind of like Marc, except for me, it started on the Wild West board, and I thought it was kind of cute and a place to express myself. Having been going to SC games since 1962, and I started posting on it, and so I went by the handle 23 Blast. And what was kind of funny is, so a lot of people would say, gee, is that Tom Kelly? And I would kind of laugh, or they'd say this. That. So one day, I get a text message. And I don't know how it happened, to be honest with you. And it was Garry. And he says, I'd like to talk to you. Okay. Now, he didn't realize, nor did I, that we had actually talked to each other a number of times at USC, at UC Irvine. And so we talked on the phone, and he says, I've got this great idea. I can't offer you any money. And, at that time, what was the internet? It was just fun, right? It didn't seem like a business to me. And he said, I got this idea that I'm doing, and I started up, and, I'd like you to, consider coming aboard. He says, I'll, for your payment, I'll give you can come to all the dinners that I'm going to hold for recruiting and all that. It'll be comped. I will give you a free subscription, of course. I said, oh, sure, fine, whatever. I just enjoyed, the ride. And so, I finally got to meet him, and he was, when people say, what was he like? I go, he was so unique in such a positive sense. A lot of what WeAreSC today is, that foundation has never changed. Garry's thing was always, we don't have to be first, but we have to get it right. And so a lot of people would kind of scoop us sometimes, and that was a little frustrating. But a lot of times those people were proven wrong. And Garry's philosophy was right on. He felt that because the internet was such a new game, kind of like TV was to radio at the time in the early 50s, that we couldn't do anything to create a stoppage of the momentum. I don't think the internet, to be quite honest with you, was well received by the USC athletic department. And maybe the sports information department in general at the time, because it was so new and it was a threat. But what I found out from Garry was there was so much more to Garry. There was so much more than just SC football. He used to ride up with me, sometimes to practice from Orange County, and we wouldn't talk anything of USC football. We'd talk about life. We talked about Elvis Presley, which we both enjoyed, and his stories of as a young person getting money and saving it so he could go with his mother, Kathy, and their family to see Elvis Presley at the Las Vegas International Hotel. You know, Garry was the type of person, he had no class system. I saw him do things for people that were really at the lowest end of, you know, their life financially, and he would help people. I mean, if there was somebody who needed help, Garry was first in line. It was really a tribute to where his heart was. You know, naturally, he hung with some of the most famous people in USC football history, no question about it. But he hung with a lot of people, and I was with him at the time. Just regular posters, just good people. And so I think that was part of his great allure by what made the website go, is Garry was all people to all people, so to speak. And I always respected him for it. You know, he was the type of guy that if you needed any help or he could get you something along the way, there was a couple of things that he asked me if I wanted to do because he had connections, and I did it, and would always be appreciative. But I can tell you right now, everything that's happened to me is because of him, and has given me an opportunity to be really a nobody. Although I had written before, I do plead guilty to that, but not able to write about USC football, which is just like many of you that are listening to this show and to the people on our panel. You live it, you breathe it. You know, I don't know some of the people that are currently running USC have the same passion, to be honest with you. But, you know, he was the connection force. He was the fiber that brought everything together and continued to get together. Let me ask you this, guys. Can you give a specific story about Garry that our viewers might enjoy knowing? Marc, any stories that come to mind to you about Garry and your relationship with him?
Yeah, I've been trying to think of this whole time while everybody's been talking about him, and again, it just goes back to the meet and greets, to the company softball games that you know that come about, the picnic where the Spirit of Troy would show up, and I don't know. I guess maybe my favorite, for me, a personal little moment. We had a meet and greet in Long Beach, and it happened after one of the practices, and this is when anybody could go to practice. And those sidelines were packed inside Howard Jones Field. I mean, Tim Tessalone, I don't know how he survived that era. And I know Lincoln Riley would have nothing to do with that based on what he said a couple weeks ago. I mean, he's not even a fan of having parents there. Anyways, I'm at practice, and there's about 10 minutes left. And in saunters in one of the local beat writers at the time. First initial S, last initial W. Everybody out there can try and figure it out on their own. And this particular beat writer always had a habit of trying to come across as he knows what's going on in the program, and when he writes about it, it always had a negative slant. And so when he walked by me, I happened to say, "Hey, you know, glad you can show up for practice. You know, it's over." And he was like, "Haha, real funny." And I just kept needling him. And people, you know, everybody that was there was watching this. So, anyways, we're in Long Beach. We're at the Yard House, and Garry comes up. He's like, "Marc, high five. What's up?" He goes, "Everybody's talking about how you treated so and so at the practice and put him in his place." He goes, "Nobody has ever done that before, and I just want to say thank you." So it was just one of those fun moments because everybody hated that guy. And I don't even think he covers USC. At least he's not credentialed anymore. Let's just leave it there.
Bruce, what is something that a story that you could share with us about Garry?
Yeah, I will. But by the way, one of the things I thought of when you were going through the dinners, I remember the old dinners at the Papadakis Taberna in San Pedro.
Yeah,
those were great. And, you know, John would be there, and those were great days.
That's
what was the name of the
Petro Servia?
Yeah, there you go. Well, let me give you three, okay? I'll sort of take them in chronological order. One thing I remember vividly is being with Garry at the 2005 National Championship game at the Orange Bowl when we beat the hell out of Oklahoma. And I happen to have a picture. If you guys can see this, let me try it again. Let me try to get it in there. Come on. Okay, wait, I'm such an incompetent when it comes to this. Where am I going here? Oh, there it is. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Garry and me.
Yeah,
Having an adult beverage
of course.
after the game. This is after we smashed Oklahoma. And I remember that vividly. That was a great game, and we had a great time with Garry. We were there the day before, and we all went to dinner, had a great time. So that's one. Number two was Bush Push. Garry and I, at that point, I'd been given a lot of money to the school, but I couldn't get on the sideline, and I couldn't get on the sideline at away games. I had pretty good tickets, but we knew a guy named, you guys may have known him, Bob Kanisevich. And Bob was a big auto dealer up in the Bay Area. In fact, I think Garry bought a couple cars from him. But Kanisevich, I had helped Kanisevich's son one time I gave him a couple of my season tickets for a game. And somehow we got in touch with him, and he said, you guys, I've got 2 50-yard line tickets for you on the SC side for the game. And so, yeah, we'll take those. So we went, and we were on the side where the Leinart's pass to, what was his name, the tall receiver?
Dwayne Jarrett.
Yeah, Dwayne Jarrett was there. And of course, the whole thing where I'm having a senior moment, just a second. When the quarterback went out of bounds, but the Notre Dame people thought the game was over. You remember that?
When Leinart was out of bounds, yeah.
Yeah, Leinart was out of bounds. And so Garry and I are watching these people all come down out of the stadium, only to be turned back when the reality struck that in fact the game was still going. Then the next play was the so-called Bush push, and you could just see the crestfallen Notre Dame fans. Garry and I think we talked about that for years after that, how wonderful that was to see that in excitement just fizzle, and for these people to be so miserable. We just love that. So that's a little story. And I think probably one here that's probably the most fun of all the stories is, this was in, I think, 2007 or 8. It was the year we beat Notre Dame 38-0 at South Bend. Marc, what was his name? Marc, quarterback. Marc
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yeah, Marc Scott. I'm
I thought you were talking to me. I was like, huh?
Yeah, no, it's okay. You're an encyclopedia. I should have asked you. But Sanchez threw 4 touchdowns. It was a great win. But we had tickets. I had good tickets and all that. But we wanted to be on the sideline. And I don't know how this happened. Okay, I don't know how exactly it happened. But Garry was able, through, I don't know, it may have been through Tessalone. I don't think so. He was able to get himself and me, because he couldn't be there because we didn't have enough press passes or something. And so we were disguised as Notre Dame photographers. And I'm going to show you the picture. Check this out, guys. See that?
Yeah, that's
Garry
perfect.
and I, Notre Dame photographer. I don't know what you call it, vests or whatever.
Yeah, photographer.
Okay, so I wore that for about a quarter, and I told Garry, I said, I'm not wearing this crap anymore. So I threw it back where the tarp was. But in any case, a part of that, and I told you the story earlier, part of that was my son Vince was there, and he had Greg Katz's press credentials. And Tessalone, the former sports information director, walked by and did a double take on Vince and said, "Wait a minute, you're not Greg Katz." But he, to his credit, he didn't say anything else. He just kept moving. One last thing I'll say about that was kind of cool. I spent the whole game standing right next to Will Ferrell. And we had a great talk. We had a lot of laughs, and he got a big kick out of the photographer vest we were wearing and so forth. But then afterwards, Garry and a friend of his, Jeff Odekirk, and Vince basically had to carry me back to our car because my knee was gone and I couldn't walk. And then we had a wonderful dinner. We actually did it we were staying in South Bend rather than Chicago, which I would recommend. I know we have a question on that. But it was a wonderful time. We had we laughed about that with Garry for years. And it's just a wonderful, fond memory I have.
All right, Kevin, what about yourself? Any specific story about Garry that the viewers would enjoy hearing?
Yeah, I think for the sake of time, I'll move along a little bit. But yeah, I was at it was a Cal game, and of course I met up with Garry and a couple other guys, and then one of the guys I met up with was a former Cal safety, and we became, believe it or not, fast friends to this very day. I mean, a fair amount of the insights into secondary play I'll review with this gentleman. So the Garry's reach is long and far, even to this very day. And then as I pointed out earlier, one of the things I did enjoy doing was getting Garry some information on to prepare him for the pregame radio show that he participated in, and one of which was I ended up writing up a story on Sean Cody, which ended up being pretty good because he was the other half of the show, so that worked out pretty nice.
We could use him right now, by the way.
Quite okay.
One of the things I think, I don't know if I use the word enjoy, but I guess enjoy and appreciate was, I mentioned earlier that Garry would help some people that were the less fortunate. One was a young man who had suffered, to be quite frank, he was fighting cancer at the time. His name was Ricky Rosas. And
Yeah, I remember Ricky.
Ricky lived
The little guy, the little man.
Little guy, yeah. Using a Mark's term, a mensch. And, he had every reason to think that this, his plight in the world was the worst ever. And Garry befriended him. Ricky would take the bus rides to come to practice. I think Garry introduced Pete Carroll to him. And from there it was, Garry just went out of his way. And if I can use the term from the question, enjoy, Ricky Rosas so enjoyed that he had a place, he had a kind of like a home at USC practice and everything, that you could see this kid's face just light up. And I know that Garry, because he would tell me on rides to the practice and stuff, how much he enjoyed watching the smile on Ricky's face and some of the things that Ricky would do. And Ricky, he really at some point, I think he felt he was part of that USC roster over the years. And it was just the type of story about Garry that, that a lot of people don't know, but, we don't get to see Ricky as much as we once did because, as Marc pointed out, practices are closed. But that was one of the many joys that Garry brought that people probably don't know. All right, let me ask you this. How did Garry affect the way USC football is covered both in mainstream media and on the internet? Marc?
Well, I mean, he obviously was involved at the beginning of this, where mainstream media is kind of second in line now when you consider everything. So I don't know how he affected it, but he was definitely there at the beginning. And look where we're at. You've got major websites like this one owned by large networks. I remember when Garry started, he was just an independent guy. And then all of a sudden ESPN came a calling. So that's where, like I said, I don't know how much effect he had on it, but what he did while he was a part of it was very instrumental. I mean, you talked about everything at the beginning of the show, everything he did leading up to the game of the week on Prime Ticket or Fox, whatever it is now. So he was definitely what you would call, I guess, an innovator.
Bruce, how has it changed USC football, the way it's covered in the mainstream and on the internet?
Well, I think one of the things that Garry did was he forged, I don't know if I can directly answer your question, but I want to say this. He forged incredible relationships with players, coaches, staff, and former players. And he had access to those people.
Yeah.
And he was able to bring stories forward about the human side of those people, which I thought he did extremely, successfully. In terms of the internet, Greg, I didn't even know what the hell the internet was when he started. I had no clue. And we did, I'd invested in Trojan Football Facts. And then he said, well, we've got this idea, we're going to do the internet. Oh, really? But yeah, he was an innovator. And I think the thing about him too, that I don't know if it's changed the way we cover SC football, because you can't get into practices anymore. That's the unfortunate thing. But he was able to bring this human component about the players and the coaches and the staff and the former players that you guys have full access to that anymore. But I think it was a great step forward. And look at all the copycats. Ryan Abraham, I know Ryan well, USCfootball.com, and a whole bunch of these other guys, 24/7, all these guys, they all copied Garry.
I should add one thing, that I guess what Garry did bring to the industry is recruiting coverage.
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good
Before that, it was Lowell Schrader had his thing. There was very few people that had recruiting information at the ready. You had to buy the annual publications or wait for, the Parade All-American teams. The internet, and with what Garry came along with, just put recruiting out there where all of a sudden that was the industry. It wasn't so much as everybody wanted to talk about USC. If you didn't know who was going to be the next player at USC, didn't matter. That was what was important. And to be able to highlight that, I think was, again, he was an innovator, and it carried over to the point where, he was hosting the game of the week over there on Prime Ticket. So, sorry.
No, that's very, very interesting.
Good, Mark. Good.
Kevin, how did he change football, mainstream media and on the internet as far as USC is concerned?
I think he used the tools that were barely available at the time and expanded it to include USC football and making that conversationally available to thousands of people outside of Southern California, because most of my time has been outside of Southern California. I moved a lot, and a lot of it's been, certainly out of Southern California, sometimes out of the country. And but I always had a chance, once WeAreSC.com was rocking and rolling, I always had a go-to place, even before I was affiliated with the organization. I had a go-to place to find out what was going on with the football team. Now, unlike Garry, I was not a half full kind of guy. I mean, I'm one of those guys that was like, I know BS when I see it. And so he and I would have some great conversations, and he'd always lift my spirits, which was always kind of a good thing.
Are you saying, Kevin, that you used to look at the cup half empty?
No, I call it the way I see it, and it is what it is. Regrettably, I've been right a lot over the last 10 years, so just leave it at that.
Well, I think that Garry completely changed the mainstream media in Los Angeles. I think eventually the power of the internet was going to evolve into what it is today. But he certainly, without question, put everyone on notice. He accelerated it, even for those that didn't want to accept the internet, especially USC football. There was a lot of resistance to WeAreSC.com and all the others, I might add, that were part of the structure in the early beginnings. And Garry kept pushing and kept pushing and kept pushing. The thing about it is, look what he's done. Look at the Times, the LA Times, the stoic LA Times, which would run stories during the season, would lightly, if ever, touch on recruiting, except on letter of intent day. And look how it's changed now. The pressure of the internet, and I'm going to credit WeAreSC.com, and I forgive all the other sites that are doing a great job. But really, Garry pushed it, and he was a gentle soul to the point where I think when the big change to me was when Garry took the chance for all of us to go to ESPN. And at the time, it all sounded great and good, and
Right.
there is a sense of satisfaction when I would do a story and it was on the national page, but more importantly, it was WeAreSC.com was getting the notification of it, and it was certainly helping us. The idea that Garry was on all the shows, the pregame shows, and was the first person that everyone ran to on KABC radio or all sports stations. And his thing was, if I'm on the air, that means we're getting free publicity. And as we all know, Garry was a longtime host on the USC pregame show on radio. And it was that constant reinforcement, which I think in the end forced the mainstream media and other internet outlets to up their game. And even though we left ESPN, unfortunately, because there was no really option to it, and but it worked out okay. The fact of the matter is, it established credibility the way that USC is covered, because if WeAreSC.com's on ESPN, was there a more credible source in sports than ESPN? And it really helped the other websites too. So when people sit there and they look at the press box the way it is today, and you see this long row of people covering WeAreSC.com and watching the others the way they're doing it, it's all in the best interest of the fans. It's free publicity for the football program. Let's wrap this up. What is the legacy of Garry Paskwietz, Marc?
I don't know how else to encapsulate this. We're still doing this. I don't know how else to. I've answered the question, and to try and say what is his legacy, it's still going. That's it. I mean, it's short and sweet. It's still going.
Bruce, what's Gary's legacy?
Well, Garry's legacy is passionate, truthful reporting of SC sports, primarily football. Again, I think truthful, never willing to print a story unless he had confirmed that it was true. And that's a big deal, especially today. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful legacy. And I think also the legacy was of just the way Garry connected with people and the impact that he had on them. Look at us sitting here today, all these years of going, I guess it's 4 years since he died. And we're talking about Garry, and we're talking about Garry for a reason, because all the things we said, he was an innovator. He was relentless in pursuit of those goals. But more importantly, he was a wonderful human being, a man of real character, and a tremendous loss to all of us when he died. Oh, can I show you one other, Greg, can I show you one other thing before?
Sure, sure.
This is the back, after Garry died and we, got the group together, we were trying to continue the legacy. This is the T-shirt that I had done for the team. Can you see? That's the front of it.
Yeah, bring it down a little bit so that people can see it. Yeah, and pull it more towards you a little bit. Yeah, so we can see. Basically, it says WeAreSC.
Okay, and then here's the back of it. This is to your point about the legacy. I wanted to have this here. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, Garry's legacy continues. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what our team wears. Okay, and so I just wanted to throw that in, Greg.
Kevin, what's Garry's legacy?
Well, yeah, and I think, look, everybody's been very articulate and able to express it, I think, quite wonderfully. I think this show is part of that. It continues on, and it highlights USC football, which was Garry's passion. And, I'm happy to be part of both USC football and WeAreSC.com.
We're really happy to have you, and it's great to have somebody who really knows a lot about defense, because that's going to be the topic all next year, Kevin.
Yeah, I tell you what, if Lincoln wants a coach, give me a call. I demand a parking space. That's for sure.
I just want a recording of the last 5 minutes of the game of listening to Kevin. I want a copy of that.
Yeah, it wasn't.
That wasn't pretty. That wasn't pretty.
I just stood there on the field with my jaw hitting the floor going.
Yeah, well, we were sitting there, all of us, and we were just kind of humiliated, if you want to know the truth. It was just a sense of embarrassment, and to see that kind of
down that rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
I didn't mean to take us down that rabbit hole. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're still healing. We're still healing.
Let me say about Garry's legacy, if I could. He was a man of change. He changed the way people look at USC, read about USC. He brought people together on our message boards that still are high volume. He provided a service. He was an innovator. He created really the template from which all the other sites, to be quite honest with you, and many of these are corporate owned. When Garry was alive, they would call him up to get his feelings on what they should do or where they should go. And a lot of them wanted to buy into Garry at the time, into WeAreSC.com, but he refused it. He never wanted us to become what happened at ESPN, that we were swallowed up so that we were not competition. And I think that's what ESPN did in hindsight. They didn't want to compete with WeAreSC, even though that in their world, we were almost like a speck in the sand, but they respected enough that they brought us aboard, which did help us, as I said, in credibility. But the fact of the matter is I personally think putting Garry's picture on the front of our website is so important that people realize without this person, you wouldn't be going to where you go to every day. I always laugh at people that when they see, quote, how much it is a year. And I say, well, how much do you pay for gas, right? How much do you pay for gas? $50, $70. Well, for 99.99 per year, I said, as soon as you get hooked on this thing, you're going to be checking WeAreSC.com 2-3 times a day. You'll get onto the message boards and you'll say, this is one of the greatest bargains ever. And kind of with that in mind, Bruce, I know you wanted some final thoughts about WeAreSC.com. You assume the CEO's role. And just to give a brief comment, when Garry passed away, aside that we were all devastated, and I had talked to Garry a couple of days before he had his second stroke, which was the final deal. Garry had such grand ideas about the future. He wanted to go. So when I got the call and they said that Garry had passed, it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? And maybe it was just me. I said, we can't let this die. This means so much to so many people. And it meant so much to Garry that whatever it's going to take, we're going to put it on life support system until we can figure out where we're going. So I remember the idea that it was right, of course, during the beginning of the letter of intent coming on for the it used to be. I said, holy mackerel, not only am I going to try to continue the site, nobody asked me to, but I said someone's got to do something to keep it alive. We can't just all of a sudden go off the air, so to speak. And I remember that I was telling my girlfriend and stuff, I said, oh my God, I said, letter of intent's coming. And, Garry was the brains behind a lot of the stuff. And I just remember that trying to keep it going, I didn't think I was the one to run it. It's a young man's game, basically. But we can't let it go. And then Bruce, you came on and, you came to the rescue, so to speak. And you're the one who dealt with keeping us going in a financial standpoint so that we're where we are today. So elaborate a little bit, if you would, on that, please.
Well, first of all, let me say this, that I share everything you said about preserving the site, making it, sustaining it and growing it even. And but when Garry died, his family asked that I step in and sort of oversee it moving forward. And the goal was to do everything we could to conserve the site, to have it continue to be sustainable and for it to grow. And so I said I would do that. And we were able, first of all, we were really lucky, had just a great group of people but working with us. I mean, our team, Mark, Chris Arledge, Kevin Bruce, Scott Schrader, who is one of the best, if not the best recruiting guys in the country. So we've had that. But what happened was I was able to make a deal with On3, and we have a partnership with them. And that's good. And that will keep us going. And the idea is to keep this going well beyond, we have a 10-year deal, but the idea is to keep it going well beyond that. And in that regard, let me just say something to everybody. We don't make much money, okay? This is not a big profit generating business, trust me. But one of the ways in which we're able to sustain ourselves is through the memberships. And so I would just like to encourage everybody, if you're not a member, if you're not a subscriber, please consider doing so. It means a lot because it gives us a basis of revenue upon which we can operate. So that's basically what I wanted to say, Greg.
All righty. So we've done that. Let's move along here if we can. Kind of a post thought in halftime. If Garry was with us today, what would he think of the current state of USC football? Kevin, what do you think he'd think about what's happening in this day with SC football?
He'd be excited. He'd be looking toward the future. He would see the glasses more than half full. A lot of good portal entries. I know we've had some losses, but we've had a lot of gains, more net gain than losses. Clearly, the coaching staff has identified that you can't win without a defense. I could have told him that for free. That's all right. He would pick up that mantle too, because he was he looked at the complete game. He didn't get blinded by offense. So that was important, and that's how he would see it. So like, look, we know we need to put a defense on the field. We got to put a complete team out there, and that also now, thankfully, should include anyway special teams. How that got overlooked purposefully, by the way, that was not an accident. Is an incredible miss on the part of Lincoln Riley, and I will tell you that I saw some things from a coaching perspective that shocked me. Some really good stuff on offense and some horrible clock management up on the sideline from the coaching staff. And on defense, it was just pitiful. I don't know what to tell you. I'd like to say that it was going to get better. Well, Garry would say it's going to get better. So you know what? I'm going to go with that.
It's true.
Mark?
Yeah, no, he played the future of the pro. There's no doubt about it. I know Garry loved power football. He loved running the ball. So I'd be interested to know, have a chat with him if I could, how he, sees the way the game has changed, where it's all offense now, it's all passing compared to, that power running game, that tough, tenacious defense. Obviously he got to enjoy the Pete Carroll, Norm Chadley, Kiffin Sarkisian years, but it's even gone further than that. So he would definitely be excited. I don't know if he ever envisioned the transfer portal, so that would be something new to get his take on. But yeah, to what Kevin said, he would put on a good front, but when I guess when the cameras aren't on, or he didn't have to write about it, he would have his strong opinions on what needed to be fixed. I wouldn't say he was a homer, but he wouldn't call out the staff publicly. Let's just leave it there.
All right, Bruce.
Well, let me just say this. Garry, like me, would probably have adjusted to this air raid offense, or whatever we want to call it, air raid plus some running offense, because he, like me, was old school and liked running the football. So I think he would be adapting. He'd be adjusting to this and saying, well, it's not exactly like it used to be, although we saw some glimmers of hope this year with them pulling guards, running counter plays, running power. We didn't see that for the last several years, so that was positive. But I think he would have been absolutely disgusted, frankly, with the defense and the special teams. Is as Kevin pointed out, the special teams, man. I was just watching. Did anybody see the Jaguars game the other day?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't watch a lot, but I watched some of it. But that number 39, that little guy, that kick returner, it's unbelievable. Are you going to tell me we can't return kicks like that? So I think he would have been very shocked with the fact that we so underachieved in that area. But like you said, he's a positive guy. Kevin said he was a positive guy, and he'd be looking on the brighter side and hoping, for better times.
All right, I'm going to wrap up this halftime portion with maybe some revelations, opening it up to what Garry really felt, because he did confide in me. and I think he would be pleased at the direction of the program. I know that he was absolutely beside himself with Helton. He felt
God.
that Helton had betrayed credibility. He didn't think he was telling the truth. He didn't live up to things. And I'm not just saying this is Greg Katz's opinion. This is what Garry told me. And he was disgusted with the leadership above the actual coaching of it, the direction of the athletic directors. He was like, oh my goodness, this can't be, this is so bad, and felt so powerless. I think that Garry, his thing is about SC winning. He didn't like the air raid offense. He couldn't stand it. But I agree with Bruce. I think the way they were running the ball more, and a lot of it was power oriented, he would like it. He would really be disdainful of the defense. No question about it. And the physicality on both sides of the ball used to drive him nuts, which, drove, I think, everybody nuts, to be quite honest with you. But Garry always said, protect SC football in a way. The question is would Garry be as open today as he was guarded in the past? I think Garry would have adjusted to the times. I think he didn't want to do anything that would hurt USC or the football program. But I think he was on the precipice of really he started to those of us who knew him, some of the stuff he was starting to write was not like, wow, Garry must really be upset because he doesn't normally throw in this adjective or whatever. And I think he would have adjusted to where we are today. And he'd be quite proud of where WeAreSC today is, because like anything else, it adjusts. So I think as long as SC winning, that would put a smile on his face, as it does with all of us. So with that, let's move on to a completely different subject. We hope you enjoyed that celebration of Garry's life. He's still going to live on, I can tell you that. He's not going anywhere on the hearts and minds of USC football. Panel, we're going to kick off the second half of the Inside Trojans Huddle with the following. The Pac-12 released the 2023 schedule, and for the Trojans, it was a real eye-opener in the specific sequence of games. Let's divide up the schedule month by month and get your thoughts and impressions. First, we begin with the month of August, September, as the Trojans open the season, what is referred to as 0 week, which means the Trojans moved up their schedule a week ahead of time for most teams who will begin their play the first weekend in September. The Trojans, as we mentioned before, the 0 week opponent is San Jose State on August 26th. That's a Saturday in the Coliseum. So to get the September schedule quickly, September is the 2nd. Trojans play Nevada in the Coliseum. This is following the San Jose State game. Saturday, September 9th, they play Stanford in the Coliseum. Have the one of 2 bye weeks on Saturday, September 16th. Saturday, September 23rd, they're at Arizona State. And Saturday, September 30th, they're at Colorado. So those are the sequence of games in August, September. Panel, your thoughts on the 0 week opener in late August and the September games. What catches your attention? Your general thoughts. Bruce Bagni, we'll start off with you. What catches your eye about this early series of games?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'd also recommend that people who are listening to this also read your column called The Ides of October and November, to talk about the kind of the schizophrenic schedule this is. I mean, it's sort of broken into 2 parts, because it seems to me that the first part is pretty much, I mean, assuming that we improve at least marginally on defense and improve some of the special teams, and assuming that Caleb is Caleb and we integrate some of these new guys, I see us being 6-0 without a lot of trouble.
Okay. Kevin, what's your thoughts on these opening through August and September? What sticks out to you? Anything in particular?
Not honestly. all these teams are gonna be better this coming season than they were last season, as are we. Okay, and I believe that. I think our defense will be better. The special teams will improve. I could say something smart, but I won't.
Come on, Kevin.
No, I won't. Now, the offense, that one's gonna be interesting because quite honestly, I don't know. I mean, Caleb being Caleb, but that's a tough order. So we're gonna make sure that we keep that young man happy, healthy, and upright. So otherwise, the team offensively will. I'm not sure I want to say struggle, but it'll have to change its character into more of a traditional team, traditional offense. So, but that said, I look at the first few games, I go, that's a waste of a bye, honestly. We can beat all we absolutely should beat all these teams, and it shouldn't be terribly close for the most part. There's always going to be one or two. Make it. We make a close game out of something that shouldn't be. And by the way, good teams don't do that. That's what we got. We got to work on those kinds of things. Those are little mistakes that come back and cause those things to emerge, right? But I'm hopeful that we'll get that tidied up. Put some put some defense on the field. Some guys that can actually tackle. And by the way, I don't want to get too blindfolded with respect to the defense, but we've got to get a secondary that can play run support. I'm sorry, the guys are just not in the right position for tackling. We can talk about 3-4, 4-3, 3-3-5, whatever. That's all kind of interesting discussions. But if we don't get a secondary that can get into the box and make tackles, I don't care what you run, we're going to have trouble.
What about Kevin? We haven't seen you for a while. I wanted to ask you this question because it came up in a few of the panels. I don't recall us blitzing. Did we blitz very often?
No, Grinch doesn't blitz. Contrary to what a lot of people think, they think that he's a blitzing kind of a coach. He doesn't. What he does do though is he slants and stunts a lot of plays. So he won't bring a lot of outside pressure with a blitz. He'll bring pressure from a variety of different angles with other player positions, right? He'll twist a outside linebacker or even a nickelback, Max Williams, or a safety, whatever. He'll twist that, and by a twist I mean one defensive player will cross the face of another defensive player, and with the hopes of confusing the offensive blocker and make a tackle, try to get in the backfield. Grinch's problem, one of his problems, was that he was not getting routinely throughout the entire season good penetration in the backfield.
Yeah,
and yet he didn't blitz.
That couldn't believe that.
Yeah, and therefore you had a real problem. Is that, oh my gosh, you're not going to get, you're not going to get the tackle for losses. Our tackle for losses was one of the poorest in the country. I don't have the number. I used to have the numbers in front of me, but I don't have them. We were like, maybe 100 and something. I mean, that's pathetic.
Yeah,
I mean, it's truly pathetic, and that's not even counting the missed tackles, right? Guys know about the missed tackles and all that. That's just missed tackles is just pure crappy defense. It's crappy coaching, crappy defense. I'd rather put a kid who's a half a step slower out there who's going to make a tackle. And I don't, for the life of me, I don't understand why those changes weren't made. But I also don't understand why we didn't have a special teams coach either.
well, that's true. Yeah.
All right, Mark, let me ask Mark, let's move on to Mark here. Mark, I know you wrote extensively about the schedule. Let's focus in on this late August, September schedule. How do you see it overall? What sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think Kevin said it. the bye week in week 3 or week 2, whatever you want to categorize it, it's a waste of a bye week. You're starting off San Jose State, Nevada, and Stanford at home. Stanford, we always play them first Pac-12 conference game of the year. Stanford's breaking in a brand new coaching staff and a whole new system. USC better be 3-0, and they better be resting their starters, sometime in the third quarter. Then you're on, you get the bye week, and then you're on the road for 2 weeks at ASU and at Colorado. Those 2 road games are interesting only for the fact that ASU's starting quarterback is presumably going to be Notre Dame's ex-starting quarterback, who had a really good game against USC last year. They've got it, but again, they've got a new head coach as well. And then at Colorado, this whole Deion Sanders, we'll see if Prime Time can coach. We know he can motivate. We know he's going to recruit well. We're going to see if he's going to be able to put together a staff and how much does that program improve by the time USC shows up. But other than that, month of September is the week of August, and the month of September is a cakewalk.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mark. I think it is a cakewalk. There's good news and bad news. Obviously, we'll get to the bad news later on in the schedule, but the good news is SC will have enough time to reestablish their offensive line, which I think actually is going to be quite good. And it'll give them a series of games to get their coordination together. The intrigue with our ASU is the new coach, obviously, and it's at Arizona State. The Colorado game will be intriguing, and probably we'll get maybe a national audience on that one because of Deion, and of course by that time we'll have to know what Deion's record is. But they're intriguing. But when it's all said and done, if SC is not undefeated, it will be shocking. But it'll also be a precursor that if they score a lot of points, you'll say, all right, we're moving. We know they're not all great teams, but we're putting points on the board. The real question mark is, are they going to be giving up points? And that's something that remains to be seen. So let's move on here to the month of October on the schedule. We're not sure whether the first game in October, Friday or Saturday, which would be October 6th or 7th. Trojans are going to host Arizona in the Coliseum. Then they're going to go take the big trip on October 14th at Notre Dame. Then they come back and they're going to play 2-time defending Pac-12 champion Utah in the Coliseum on Saturday, October 21st. And I guess you could say they get a break in the schedule. They're going to take their last trip as a Pac-12 member at Cal on Saturday, October 28th. What are your thoughts on the October games? What catches your attention? General thoughts, Bruce?
Well, just an overall perspective too. And Kevin can really relate to this because he played on the great teams in the 70s when they took on all comers. I've been really disgusted. Now, I know it's the nature of the beast now. Like, look at the SEC out of conference games. They're pitiful. UA, Alabama, Birmingham, and whatever. But, I remember a day when we used to take on all comers. It's kind of like the way Florida State was with Bowden at the beginning. He played everybody. And so I'm a little bit disappointed that we don't play tougher. A schedule of out of conference with the exception of Notre Dame. But getting back to the October schedule, at Notre Dame is always a tough one. And I suspect that that'll be very tough. I think we can beat Notre Dame there. I think we're going to be a lot more physical this year, hopefully. You mentioned the offensive line. Some of the new guys we have in the offensive line, I think, are going to make a huge impact. I think we're going to be tougher on defense, et cetera. But then Utah is our nemesis. Then we play them next in the Coliseum, and that damn, what's the quarterback's name? I always forget his name.
Cameron Rising.
Yeah, Rising. Yeah, I'm sorry he's coming back. But, just we ought to be able to beat Utah at the Coliseum. I've never thought I'd ever say that 10 years ago. Oh my God, I think we can beat Utah at the Coliseum. And then Cal to me is just a win. So I think there's a real risk there that we could lose those games. Right now, I'm saying, based on what I understand to be the new influx of people and what we've seen on offense, I could see us winning both of those games, Notre Dame and Utah. But they'll be tough.
Kevin, what do you think?
With Bruce, I think we take care of business with respect to Notre Dame and Cal. Utah they got our number right now, and they've got rent-free space in our head. It's crazy. They're honestly, they're good. They're not that good. They're well coached. They're the best coached team in the Pac-12 by far, and frankly, I would argue top 5 best coached team in the country.
Yes,
That's
I agree so much.
That's what's driving the difference here. We put out a disciplined team onto the field, all aspects, offense, defense, specials, coaching staff. Finishing the Tulane game with a couple timeouts. How useful is that right now? I mean, this is the kind of crap that is unacceptable. And we're paying a lot of money to these coaches. They need to figure out how the hell to get this stuff done. And frankly, I'm tired of talking about lousy coaching, whether it was Helton or frankly, some aspects of what Lincoln Riley did his first year. Look, congratulations on turning a 4-8 program around, but congratulations for looking crappy when it counted.
Yeah, amen.
Sorry about that. I just got to call it the way it is.
I agree with you.
We say,
completely.
tell it like it
Completely.
is. Mark,
You're
tell it
right,
like it is. What do you see here on this October schedule?
This looks like a regular schedule. This is how a schedule should look. You talked about, and I'll get to it when we get to the November part of it, but it goes from easy. I mean, it goes from really easy to, okay, now you're going to play at home, you're going to play on the road, you're going to play at home, you're going to play on the road. That's what a schedule should look like. And I have no issue with the way the teams line up as far as who they're playing. At Notre Dame, again, they brought in supposedly a better quarterback. So we know that when USC travels to South Bend, throughout the record books, doesn't matter what happens, strange things happen there. Unless USC is just an incredibly more dominant program. And I'm not sure until they get the defense fixed and special teams has a full-time coach, whether or not USC is a better program. Are they a better team than Notre Dame? Probably. But again, that's that line in the sand that makes a difference playing at home, playing in South Bend. Utah in LA, look, I understand where everyone's coming from. They have our number, so to speak. Lincoln Riley talked about this a couple of weeks ago. A couple of things go differently in Salt Lake City. USC is probably in the playoffs. Yeah, he doesn't want to address the elephant in the room, which was, hey, stop the other team. We don't have to have or rely on those other things happening. And then Cal is, it's the weekender. I don't think Cal is going to be a threat to this team, even if USC's defense only improves by 20%. We know it's going to get better than that. It has to. So yeah, again, the Notre Dame and Utah, you pick a loss if it's going to happen there. You think it's going to happen on the road. You're not going to let Utah beat you 3 times in a row, right? That would never happen, right? Right?
I don't know.
They have lost to him 3 times in a row, right?
Already have. I mean,
In 2021, Utah beat SC in the Coliseum, correct?
Okay, you're right. 20. I have completely erased 21. So they can't beat them 5 times in a row, right? Anyways, so yeah.
All right. Well, let me just get through this October portion. I think this is the first real test for USC, and so much could go right and so much could go wrong. If they lose to both Notre Dame and Utah, which is a possibility, they're going to be out of the national picture. End of story. Notre Dame, I think with the new quarterback coming in from Wake Forest, and I totally agree with Mark. If you've been to Notre Dame, a lot of stuff happens that you just go, whoa. Part of it is because Notre Dame is pretty good. They should be pretty good on their offensive line again. The best thing that we know that SC's really got going for them, they have the best player in America, and he's at the quarterback position. So you have a chance always with Caleb Williams. And hopefully they're going to be undefeated. In fact, it's possible if Notre Dame can beat Ohio State at Notre Dame before they get to SC, you could have a battle of undefeateds, and that we know how Notre Dame and the campus and everything reacts to games of that magnitude. Utah.
Let me jump in real quick.
Sure,
Greg.
sure.
I just got to say something real quickly, and I'll move on. But the Notre Dame, running a Wake Forest quarterback, I'm actually excited about for us because that's a slow read, pass option, slow RPO offense, and that's not what Notre Dame is good at. So either Notre Dame changes their offense or the quarterback changes how he plays football, offensive football. So we'll see how that rolls. And I'm also I just think Notre Dame is not the Notre Dame that we're used to looking at, nor are we the USC that they're used to looking at. So let's go mix it up and figure out who's better. I think we can win that one. And I'm sorry I took a little bit of your time, Greg.
No, that's fine. I think what we could all agree on is the Notre Dame game could be a coin flip, depending on who you're rooting for. Utah is really the more important of the two because it's a conference game. And even if USC did lose at Notre Dame, they're not out of the national picture, because if they can come back the next week against Utah, beat Utah, probably both games on national TV, easy call there. They could get by. Let's put it that way. So the ultimate there is don't go 0-2 back to back, but those will be very, very physical games. There's no doubt about it. Cal is like, just put a W there and let's move on. And speaking of moving on, okay, let's advance to the critical month of November. Let's take a look at November. Saturday, November 4th, Trojans are hosting Washington in the Coliseum. Then Saturday, November 11th, they travel up to Oregon and Autzen Stadium, first time since 2015, I believe. And then return home on Saturday, November 18th against UCLA in the Coliseum. And then that second bye week will matter only depending on where SC is at that point in the season. That's Saturday, November 25th. Everybody else will still be playing in the Pac-12. So, Bruce, how do you see these November games? What sticks out to you?
Well, the first point I want to make is that, do you all find it ironic that this next year looks like the strongest year in the Pac-12 in years? And yet we're leaving and going to the Big Ten. Now, I understand all the economic arguments and all that, but to me, I find that to be somewhat ironic. My thoughts are that, you got back to back. What is it? Home at Washington, Oregon away, UCLA home. Oregon away is the one probably. I wish Chris Arledge were on here right now, given how much he loves Oregon. But that could be a contest because they have a good offense. They got a good quarterback, I think pretty good coaching. And, but I think, Washington, much improved. Their coach was good. This kid, Michael Penix, is excellent. And then look at UCLA. I mean, they're better. So I like to think we can beat all three of these guys. But I think that's obviously the meat of the schedule right there. And that will be, if we come out of there and maybe lose one and undefeated otherwise, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, Yeah, I look at this and I don't feel good, given how we play. Now, look, we can win one of these games. You guys are gonna laugh. We're gonna win one of these remaining 3 games in November because of our improved kickoff unit and our improved punter.
There you go.
I am not gonna give up that dog on that bone. I'm telling you. We can absolutely win we can steal a game by that part of special teams, let alone, the remainder of it, kick return and the other elements that I think we're pretty comfortable with. That said, this is brutal. This is tough. This is tough football. We don't play well in Oregon. Sorry, we don't. And they're good. They've got talent, they've got coaching, they've got really good coaching, and they got tough football coaching, not some RPO, wussy offense type football. They're coming at you, they're gonna bloody your nose. And okay, so we come off a tough a few physical games in October, and we get right into some really tough stuff. And there isn't one giveaway there, frankly. So, okay, look, that's why you schedule them. That's why you play them. That's why you keep score. So, let's bring it on. But I'll tell you, Oregon's going to be a tough one. Washington, surprisingly difficult. They're all difficult, all really tough. So, okay, I think the easiest of the group is frankly UCLA.
Mark, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, apparently this is the Pac-12 ADs taking the high road. USC's way out. At least that's how one of the national, or Pac-12 beat writers characterized it. Look, we knew that USC was going to play Washington and Oregon this year. We knew that was going to be on the rotation. My question is, why is it backloaded back to back before the rivalry game? And then to say, oh, but you get a bye week before the conference championship game. Like they're assuming USC is going to get there.
Right.
Well, that's a great reward if they get through that, month of November gauntlet. But my question again is, why is that Washington Oregon game back to back? Why does USC always have to open the conference against Stanford? I don't know. To me, it just seems, hey, USC, we know you're supposed to be good in 2023 and you're bringing back the best college football player. Show us in November how good you are. And we're going to make it as difficult as possible. Yes, UCLA should be the easiest of those games. UCLA should have been the easiest back in 2006 also, which had a very similar end of a season type of gauntlet. So we'll see. I don't believe this is the high road. And if USC gets to the conference championship game, they will have earned that extra bye week at the end of the season. It's not a reward. They will have earned it.
Yeah, I think I had some serious questions, and I said this a long time ago when I saw that Washington and Oregon were going, which you knew they're going to be back on the schedule. Right. It's really the sequence of games. I mean, if you look back to October, and you look at the fact that really from October 14th to the end of the season, other than Cal on October 28th, these are all tough physical games. And for SC to go 6-0 or 7-0 would be probably a stretch. And the important thing is to get into the championship game, which I don't think is any guarantee with or without Caleb Williams. And we don't know what the injury situation is going to be in November when everybody is beat up. But I look at Washington with Penix and I go, you know what? They're a physical team. Who knows what's going to happen, but they'll redeem themselves or try to redeem themselves in Los Angeles. I agree with Kevin and the rest of you that, man, if you've been to Oregon, and I've been to Oregon when they're pretty good, that is a really hard place to play. And UCLA, the first thought I thought of when Mark brought up the game that the Trojans lost, I go, is this defense can only give up 13 points? I said they'll probably give them a lot more. And remember that since it is at the end of the season, a lot of people say, well, UCLA, they have to replace their quarterback. But I think we can agree with all teams are going to be more experienced, depending how inexperienced they were in September. They'll be very experienced by the end of the season. So it is a schedule that I have a lot of question marks. The big cop out for the Pac-12 is, well, we had to do it this way because of Stanford usually opens up in September, and Notre Dame is something that we can't deal with. But it's just the series of games is just really laying down the gauntlet, so to speak. All right, let's head to overtime here. We'll try to get in some quick questions from our viewers and listeners. We appreciate it. Question 1 from Johnny in San Juan Capistrano. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts and feelings regarding wide receiver Kyle Ford transferring to UCLA? What's your thoughts?
I'm sorry to see it because I don't think we ever saw his full potential. I understand why he's going, and we are loaded at wide receiver, and we're going to be even more loaded perhaps. It looks like we're going to get this guy, Jacoby, who is at Bryant. This kid is an incredible talent, about 6'5". And this Deuce Robinson, while he's a tight end, he's a freak. He's a guy who's kind of a hybrid. So I understand why he would go, but I'm just sorry to see him go. I thought he was a good kid. He was hurt a lot. He hung in there, and we never got to see what he could really do.
I think it's the final cutting of the traditional umbilical cord. When players, we already saw it with SC. They've already lost players before to UCLA. But I thought that Ford was a quality player. And the fact that he could I don't want to use the word nonchalant because I know it wasn't, but just to say, okay, I scored a touchdown against you guys as an SC player. Hey, I'll just go to UCLA. At this point in time, I think the players go wherever is best for them to get to the NFL. It doesn't matter if it's your arch rival, whatever it takes to get your final goal is the way they see it.
It looks like
I think you got more than that. I think you got optimizing, excuse me, Bruce, but optimizing NIL money as well as maximizing NFL draft potential. And I hate to see Cal Ford go. He's a good kid, good athlete, etc. Subject to injury, which is still a big question mark. UCLA is going to have to come up with a quarterback, whereas we have one. So if I'm Kyle Ford, I'm thinking that I'm just making an economic decision, frankly.
Yeah. Well, I heard today, I read somewhere today that Gary Bryant may be going to UCLA as well. I don't care one way or the other.
With his family, so that's obviously it makes it a lot easier once they bring their family on a recruiting trip.
Yeah, that's a big.
They're serious about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that Kyle Ford is already there, kind of like broke the ice, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mark, you have any comment on your thoughts on this? Players?
No, not really. I'll keep my comments to myself on this one. It's not always well because sometimes there's stuff going on behind the scenes that's not always football related.
That's true. Good point.
It's
a good point.
We wish Kyle well. That's all. He's going to get a year to show what he can do as the primary receiver, I guess. And after what he's battled through, he's probably earned that right.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have a primary receiver.
Did he get his degree, by the way? Is he going to get his degree?
He's pretty close.
Okay, so if he's going to be a graduate transfer, that probably makes a lot of sense for him.
All right, question 2 from Carmen in Las Vegas. How many more receivers is Lincoln Riley going to take? I'm still concerned about the offense and defensive linemen. I will chime in quickly on this. I think they're going to be fine on the offensive line. I think they need another player or two on the defensive line, but they're making progress. And, as far as, more receivers, well, when you lose receivers, you got to restock them with, more receivers. There's still that very strange Marvin Harrison Jr. story out there in left field. Yeah. A lot of people say, well, it's just more this and that, but didn't they say that with Jordan Addison? It was just, well, it's just this and that, and then he ends up showing up. There might be more to it than the fact that it's out there. and it hasn't been squashed. You know, I'll remain hopeful on that one if it's a possibility. I'll take them. You know.
Yep.
Any other comment, guys?
Well, just to say that, to you, I want to reinforce what you said about the O-line. You know, we're bringing in this guy, Jarrett Kingston, who played, where did he play?
Washington
Where's he
State.
from? Washington, he's from WSU. 6'5", 302 is the starter, really tough guy. We're bringing both those guys in from Florida. The tackle, Tarquin, he's 6'6", 320. And the other guy, White, is 6'5", 390. And he's an interior offensive lineman. And then when you look at some of the guys, like Dedich coming back at center, and Jonah Monheim, I thought played well at offensive tackle. Maybe Cortland Ford will come around. But then you've got a bunch of these other young guys, Elijah Page coming in, whole bunch of big, tough guys. The offensive line is definitely going to be better. The defensive line, Greg, to your point, it's improved, but the one guy we don't have is that big, tough guy in the middle. That, you know, the nose tackle, nose guard guy. We've got a lot of guys that play in tackle on the edge, but we need that one guy, and we just don't have him right now.
All right, let's move on here. Question 3 from Mike in Playa del Rey, California. I'm planning on going back to SC Notre Dame game in South Bend. When should I start booking air and hotel reservations? Any other helpful suggestions for the trip?
Well, he's already asked this question on the board. He's got some great responses. I would just say now, it's never too early.
Yeah, I would say I've actually started looking into it because I think I might want to go to this one. I think booking air is not a problem per se. I would suggest, well, I'm going to fly into Midway if I can help it. Hotel reservations, I always think it's best to stay in South Bend on Friday,
Yes.
Saturday.
Yes. You're right on that.
But you're going to have to bring some money, and you're going to have to realize where the cheaper locations are. Most of them within, I think, a 4 or 5 mile radius of Notre Dame are going. Let's put it this way, they start at 300 and move up.
Well,
So-
that's a lot cheaper than Chicago.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You know, it's kind of a fun thing to put together. I think if you're going for the first time, I would get there on a Thursday so you can go to the Navy Pier rally on Friday. But if you're in the media, generally they tell you to come to campus on Friday, get your parking pass, and that's a real must if you're a media person. So yeah, you know, Mark is right. You need to plan and do it now if you know that you're going to go. Question 4 from Jeff in Sacramento. Was our O-line really good last year, or did Caleb bail them out so much with his ability to extend plays that it made the O-line look way better than they were? There were many times the O-line failed to block, but Caleb, being Caleb, was able to extend the play for positive yards. Additionally, how much better, if any, will our O-line be this year? I think we touched on a little bit. I don't want to get too much into the O-line next year. We're going to save that for a topic for another day, but I will say that you saw what happened in the Utah championship game when Voorhees and Nealon weren't in there. I think, yes, that Caleb bailed them out many, many times to make them look more, shall we say, I think they were better this year, no doubt about it. But I think that Caleb put it in a way that made them, he covered a lot of pimples. Let's just put it that way. Any other comments on that one?
Well, I thought the offensive line was better than before, but I'd like to defer to Kevin. I'd like to get his thoughts on this.
Well, he's not with us right now, Bruce, so we'll have to get another time.
Oh, okay. But you know, I think it's I think the offensive line at times looked very good to me. And you know, they were moving the big men around, they were pulling. They were running counter plays. They're running old school power. And I thought they were pretty good. I thought Voorhees was very good. Nealon was very good. Dietich was very good. I think this Monheim kid looked a lot better as time went on. The guy's a puzzle to me is Cortland Ford. I don't know whether or not this guy will ever really get it done, but we've got a lot of other potential kids to fill in there. So, and with these we got the two new recruits from Florida and the guy from Washington State. I think those are huge, new people.
All right, we got two more quick questions here. Question 6 from Romy in Huntington Beach, California. Do you feel that Lincoln Riley will devote more critical and personal effort in the defense in special teams schemes? Comments?
He said he was going to. So now we'll hold him to his words.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's really nothing more to add to that. That was a question that he was asked 2 weeks ago directly. He answered it, says he's going to get more involved. So the question was asked, the question's been answered. Now we have to find out.
He was very, very sort of adamant about the special teams. He was, I think, kind of appalled by the special teams, the return game especially.
I guess my point is we can ask the question 100 different ways.
No, you're right. It's up to him.
And there's just not going to be a different answer. So it's just a matter of, yes, it has to. And Lincoln knows that he has to do it. He said he's not firing Alex Grinch. He's going to get more involved. There's nothing more to add to it.
I will add to it for me. Since he put it on the line that he's getting more involved in the defense, my questions would be why weren't you involved in it to begin with?
Yeah, good question.
And second of all, what can he tell Alex Grinch to do that will be so revolutionary that it will change the complexion of it? I think what Mark said is absolutely correct. The special teams, he just doesn't want to have a special teams coach, period. Whether we all think it's a stupid move, that time will tell next season. I know if you got a kid coming in as electrifying as Branch is coming in as a wide receiver who can also run back kickoffs, I would assume they'll be a lot stronger if that young man is back to receive kicks. Question 7 from Trojan fan 1963 from Santa Clarita. Would it be possible for one of you from inside the huddle to interview the person or persons whom administer the NIL collective and let us know how it basically operates and what kind of dollars are going to the players? Thanks for your time. Keep up the work. I thought this was kind of a question that Mark, that you probably have some insight onto this. Is there anything that you could perhaps clear up until we get something substantial?
I would love to do the interview as well, so I can answer that question. I don't want to throw something out there that I'm not, that I can't answer.
Fair enough.
I appreciate you putting me on the spot, Greg.
No, I thought you were actually the best person to go with it, because I know
I
you're
didn't even
quite
see
vocal with
question
it.
7 on the thing here, so apparently you got question 7. I didn't.
I will apologize to you because that was a question that came in late.
Okay.
And anytime I can get a fan in that cares enough to write a question, I try to stick it in there. Which is a reminder, again, if you have a question or comments for our panel, go either to the WeAreSC message boards and click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle viewer or listener questions. And with that, this has been a long broadcast, we realize, but I think a very informative one. So that'll do it for this Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. So until next Tuesday, a big thank you again to our panelists, Marc Kulkin, Kevin Bruce, and Bruce Bagni. You guys are great. And a special big thank you to all of you watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Have yourself a great week. This is your moderator, Greg Katz, saying, fight on, everybody.